Hey, Chloe. Welcome to the Roundup.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So we know you've been covering the Nate Abate trial. Can you tell us a little bit what that's been like for you?
Yes. Oh, my gosh. It's been such a fantastic experience. I think it's the best experience I've had covering a story. It's just been a whirlwind, and every time I go to the trial, I leave, like, so hyped up on adrenaline. Like, there's so much going on.
What made you want to cover this trial?
Yeah, so that's actually a fun question because I initially wasn't going to cover it. I was in a class and my professor kind of just mentioned like offhand that, hey, there's this trial happening this week. And she mentioned Kin Coffee. And I was like, oh, I kind of remember that happening a couple years ago. And she's like, I think it's open to the public, and it started on a Monday, and I live right down the street from the courthouse. So I was like, I'm just going to run over there and sit in and like see what this is about. And then I got hooked. I was like, oh, this is a crazy story. I need to get on this. Yeah.
Yeah, what was really unique was that Chloe actually approached us with this story. Like, we didn't have anyone that was monitoring this situation. And she was just kind of like, I'm looking at this court case. Would you be interested in taking this story? And so that's like a great example of just like how Mustang News is pretty, like, we try to be receptive in terms of like what's going on in our community and kind of running with it. But yeah.
And was this your first experience with any sort of courtroom reporting?
Yeah, it was. It was my first experience with courtroom reporting. And honestly, like my first real experience reporting. All of the other times have been for classes. And so this, like, I feel like an actual journalist now, which is...
I love that.
Yeah.
How do you think this experience is preparing you for life after college?
Oh my gosh, just like the ethics of it all and learning how to use court computers to search like documents that people don't know how to get access to. Like there's so much information out there that like you can get so easily if you just know where to go. And I think it's a lot of fun, especially like I'm a really curious person. So this has like really allowed me to like dive into something.
Yeah, I think we're like all really innately curious people in journalism. We just love to know everything and anything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a curious person, like, journalism is the perfect major for you.
100%, yeah.
How has it been going into the courtroom as a student?
Oh, yeah. So the first day that I showed up, I had no idea what I was doing, what was happening. I just, like, sat in the corner. And then the judge was like, hey, can all press stand up and then, like, ask them a question? I didn't stand up because at that point I was like, I'm not press. I'm just here to watch this. And then afterwards, this reporter came up to me and she was like, are you with Mustang News? And I said, yes. And then from there, she was like, have you covered anything? And she kind of just like showed me how to do it. And so being a student reporter, it's been like a fun experience because like I feel like I'm a real, like, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Yeah.
You are a real reporter.
You are a real reporter.
Student reporters are reporters.
Yeah.
And I love that there was someone there who heard that you were a student reporter and then helped you throughout that. That's so, like, so nice to hear.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And her name is Chloe too. And so it's like,
Aw.
Chloe and Chloe.
Instant bonding.
I noticed you actually brought in some notebooks today. I didn't mean to like call that like that, but like,
yeah.
would you mind like talking a little bit more about that and just like?
Yes, of course. So I do have 2 notebooks. I just filled up the second one today. And so basically when I'm at the trial, I record and I take photos and I got a press pass so I can do that. And then, yeah, my notebooks, I am writing the whole time. My hand hurts afterwards. And so there's like a lot of information in here. Some of it not legible, some of it is. But, but yeah. Do you want to like hear some stuff that's in it or?
I'm getting
Sure, why don't you flip to a random page?
Flip to a random page, okay. First bullet point. Four Loko was the drink of choice back then.
Oh,
okay, I don't know.
Back then. Very mysterious.
I know the context of that.
I love that though. Like, as a journalist, I feel like you kind of have to write down every detail, and I love that. That's just like a random little tidbit that you took away that day.
Yeah.
How do you decide you've taken so much notes after a day of court. How do you decide what's important enough to make it into a story?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, I take the most poignant things about the case because there's a lot of very crazy things, but at the end of it, there's 4 charges, so you got to focus on those 4 charges, and then also the 3 main victims that have been affected by this. So I'm trying to focus on them, and then everything else kind of follows. Yeah.
How has that been, kind of the emotional aspect of court reporting? How has that been for you?
Yeah, so I'm already a pretty morbid person and like strange things. So I kind of went in, and it's been like a really good experience. Like, I'm fascinated by it. Even though it's a very heavy topic, I feel like it's something that I'm interested in reporting in. Yeah.
Maybe we should give some listeners like more context as to like what this case is about. It's been running for some time now.
Back in 2022, this woman came out on Instagram, and she was like, hey, I've been sexually assaulted by this person named Nate Abate. And she began posting her story on Instagram. And then from there, all of these women just started coming out and reaching out to her, DMing her, and been like, oh my God, the same thing happened to me. And yeah, it just like went from there. And she started like this little Me Too movement in SLO. I'm not sure how this information came about, but then other people came forward, and one woman was like, hey, I was assaulted as a minor. Other women too were assaulted as a minor in this case.
When you're in the courtroom, what has been the most like interesting observation you've made?
I think some of the most interesting observations are watching the jury kind of react, especially the first time. Because I sat through the jury selection, even though that's kind of boring. I was like, I kind of want to see what's going on here. How are they picking jurors? What's the thought process for the attorneys for this? And then when the case first started and they started opening statements, and they were like, this is a case involving minors and a serial rapist, you could see all of the jurors be like, oh, what did I get myself into? Yeah. It was insane. Yeah. And so like being able to observe that, and also like kind of observing Abate, especially when Ashley is brought up. I mentioned I noticed that he gets kind of agitated when she is brought up. He the body language changes a little bit, and he has this one vein on the side of his forehead that bulges like every time her name is brought up. So I don't know. That was something that I've kept an eye on.
That is such a funny observation.
Yeah. Was Ashley the one who originally posted the Instagram post? Wow.
Yeah. So basically, the defense is, their argument is he didn't do this. Ashley actually got all these women together, and this is a witch hunt against him, basically. She basically planted this in their brains, and she has a vendetta against Abate and just wants to see him and his business like disappear and fail. Yeah.
Wow. And you mentioned that this is kind of your first experience in journalism. Can you talk a little bit about that? When did you transition into thinking of journalism as a possible career route?
I don't know. When I was like younger, in like middle school and stuff, I was like, I'm gonna be a journalist. Like, I love Anthony Bourdain and all that type of stuff. And then that kind of faded away, and I got really into plants and agriculture, especially like regenerative agriculture, and urban farming and all this cool stuff. And so I majored in plant science for my first like 2 years at Cal Poly, 2.5. And then I was just finding that wasn't really a great fit for me. And I've always been a really strong writer, and I like novelty. And I was like, oh, I think I should go into like journalism because it's like a strong suit of mine to write and be curious. Yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like a lot of us kind of originate the same way with journalism. I feel like we can all relate to that. Comes from that like childhood, like, ooh, I kind of like writing.
Yeah. I was always that like annoying kid who was why is that? Why are you doing that? I was always asking the annoying questions. And I think that's like part of the reason I'm in journalism now, because I just love asking questions and learning more about things.
We're curious people.
We're a nosy bunch.
And how has it been your first experience with Mustang News?
Yeah, my first experience with Mustang News has been fantastic. It kind of just came out of the blue. I contacted Archana. I was like, hey, I'm going to the courthouse. I don't know if anyone else is working on this. And then she was like, hey, I worked on this a couple years ago. And then she kind of just brought me in and gave me the contact information of some people. And from there, everyone's been really supportive and really excited for me. Especially like Amelia being like helping me like get the story out so fast. It's just been crazy. It's fantastic.
I'm a little invested in this too. I actually wrote the breaking story when Ashley first posted that Instagram post 2 years ago with our former editor-in-chief, also named Chloe. So when I heard this was like on the radar of someone else, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to know how this ends.
Yeah, and it's great that we have an archive of stories about this that people can look back on and now get updates on right now. So
yeah, and there's just like continuously new information that's coming out. I don't think it's going to be over after this trial because Julian Contreras is still out there. He has actually fled the country, and that is according to the attorneys. So there is a warrant out for his arrest, and so.
Do you want to say who Julian Contreras is?
So Julian Contreras is the owner of Kin Coffee, and he is related to this story and this case through Nate Abate. And so when they were younger, in their 20s, they basically had an MO. They hung out, they were best friends, and they had an MO of basically getting women intoxicated, especially young women, bringing them back to Julian's house and Julian's mom's house, which is a huge part of this. And that's where things would get out of hand and they would assault these women. And so they do this together.
Is Julian's mother a witness in this case? she
She is not. I don't really know a lot about her at this point. I just know a little bit from when she owned Glow Coffee, which after Kin closed, Julian basically gave it to her and it went through a new title called Glow. Yeah, and then that closed and that's all I know.
Wow. Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
How are you mentally dealing with this? Like after you leave the courtroom, do you have a process to kind of like think about this and like process it yourself?
That's a great question, and I don't really know. It's constantly on my mind. Like I like am deep in this. But once it's over, maybe I'll have a little bit of a break.
Good. You deserve it.
Yes.
Yeah. Just the adrenaline of this all. I feel like I'm addicted to it now. And so I need to chase some other stories. Yeah, and I've really been enjoying covering court and crime. So maybe I'll find some stuff there.
Well, thank you so much for joining us to discuss your experience reporting on this trial.
And if you're curious about learning more, you can stay tuned on mustangnews.net for some updates from Chloe here.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of The Roundup. I'm Amelia Wu, the editor-in-chief of Mustang Media Group.
I'm Emmy Burrus, the KCPR News Director.
And I'm Emma Montalbano, the Assistant KCPR News Director. Check out our other podcasts, SLO-Fi, CP101, The Gallop, Chatterbox, and Different Matters on our website, kcpr.org, or on your favorite streaming services for podcasts.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.